Good morning, everybody. Hardcore's been out for like 2 weeks, and I have been playing the Blightcaster Druid as my first character through the league. Got all the way up to the level cap, did some Reapers, so I wanted to give my perspective on the Blightcaster as a whole and to how it fits into the game, and also talk a little bit about the Blightcaster meta that's currently going on Hardcore League. So, a little while ago, I made a video specifically about the Blightcaster when it came out, talking about some of its abilities and different things you can do with it, but since that time I've had the opportunity to kind of like replay the Blightcaster a bit, examine some of the abilities a little bit more, and kind of test around with a few things. And I've refined the formula a little, which is why I think that the build that I put out for this hardcore is quite good and hits pretty much all the notes that you want to hit. The character that I actually decided to play was an Azamar instead of a human, and looking back on it, the human is definitely the way to go, so I wouldn't really make any changes to the build necessarily. I think it's quite strong, but something that is even stronger than that is, of course, the Thorn spells. Now, while most of these are not Area of Effect, yeah, you get Thorn Wave and stuff. Thorn Strike and Splinter Bolt are really the bread and butter of this character, basically doing free damage with no saving throw, especially considering not only do they do a reasonable amount of damage, it's physical, so it even hits golems and other constructs that happen to resist magic. And on top of that, you can get a rider effect on the tier 5 that makes it so your thorn spells either deal additional poison or acid damage, which just makes them hit that much harder. Now, it was just a stroke of luck that this hardcore league happened to be unbelievably good for the Blightcaster for two reasons. The first is that, well, every single monster happens to get magic resistance rating. I think this was done in an effort by Sandstone Games to kind of minimize the impact of spellcasters on the metagame. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't think this had really any effect whatsoever. Reducing the damage of spellcasters by about 30% is really not very substantial. I don't even notice it at the end game, and during the leveling process, by the time you get to level like 8 or 9, you've pretty much already bypassed the point where it even matters. But still, for those first few levels, the Blightcaster gets to completely ignore that mechanic entirely and just gets to charge its way through the game. But even more so, you then also get the Death Eater effect that makes it so whenever you kill something, you get to add your Wisdom as temporary hit points, and that stacks up. And the stacking is very, very good. So that brings us to the ultimate question. Is Blightcaster the best thing to play on hardcore? The answer is kind of. I think for the heroic leveling process, there's pretty much no contest. Assuming you are able to avoid traps by like using the jump spell, Featherfall, and a lot of timing, Blightcaster is probably going to be the best thing for heroic leveling. It doesn't even require any equipment whatsoever. You can run through the game without anything and make it through without too many issues. Where it isn't the best is the end game. Now, important note, this is not me saying that it's bad, but what I probably should have done is just used a Lesser Heart of Wood at level 20 to turn my character from a Blightcaster into a regular Druid, so I could have gone Cold Druid. Cold Druid really outshines the Blightcaster just because of the amount of area of effect damage that you're able to put out, as well as having spells with shorter cooldowns so you can have a higher throughput. Since we only really do like Reaper 4 when we get to the end game, you don't have to worry too much about spell point conservation because most monsters are dying in 1 or 2 spells, so you really just want to get those spells out faster. Even if it's like a third spell, again, not that big of a deal. Lots of quests have shrines. Stopping to hit a shrine is very, very fast and easy. And in most cases, with the spell point reduction that we have, you're not even going to run out of spell points. I think when we were running Reaper 4, my Blightcaster like only once or twice even got to half. So spell points really aren't an issue, especially as you get towards the end game in some of the lower level end game like Reaper 4, which is what people are running for Hardcore League. So Blightcaster is kind of like the do-it-all package. The one thing it doesn't have is like the sustained healing in the heroic leveling process. You are entirely reliant on your heal over time, which can be like a little annoying, but fortunately if you really want to, your character, because you are a druid, is capable of using like healing wands and scrolls, so these are options if you want to try out and use them, but honestly you don't really need them. I wouldn't really recommend it. Just go with the regular heal over times that the character actually ends up getting. Especially once you get Death Eater starting at level 6, your character becomes much, much, much stronger, getting so much more durability added. It's actually astonishing that something like that's even in the game. What usually ends up killing Blightcasters is the hubris effect, where basically you start to realize that, ooh, this is really good, and this is really fast, and I barely have to pay attention. And as you start sprinting through the game, that's exactly the moment where you forget about a trap. That's the moment where you're not paying attention, and you ignore a champion for just a little bit too long, and then it blows you up. Now, the champions this hardcore league, in my opinion, are probably the easiest ones we've ever had on a hardcore. There is some like crazy effects in Reaper mode, but because of all the power creep, everything just dies instantly. Like, there's no situation where you're going to get silenced by a monster when you're doing Reaper at endgame. You're just trying to, like, you know, get some Reaper XP. You're doing Reaper 4. Oh no, there's a champion. You just hit him with Greater Ruin. Now the champion's gone, and you don't have to worry about taking any damage or it silencing you. So overall, there aren't really too many threats if you're paying attention. But if you're not paying attention, that's where it becomes a little bit more dangerous, and I think so that's what happens to people with the Blightcasters. They kind of go on autopilot. So this comes to the big question, is Blightcaster going to get nerfed? And my answer is, I don't know. It wouldn't really make sense to nerf the damage because you can't really cast the Thorn spells in epics. Like, the Thorn spells don't really have any scaling or additional effects added onto them. In epics, there's no Thorn-based, like, tree. Like, sure, technically Primal Avatar has something that is Thorn-based, but it doesn't really work with any of the actual physical damage, and the only physical damage scaling is, like, Ruin. So you're pretty much just already shoved into Draconic Incarnation anyway, and if you're going to be in Draconic Incarnation, which gives you acid bonuses and acid spell power, why not go Hive and use all the acid spells instead of the Thorn spells? So there's basically no reason to actually use the Thorn spells in epics, so if they nerf them, that would be counterintuitive because it would just make that dramatically worse. So if you actually wanted to be a Thorn caster, it wouldn't be good. So nerfing them wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Additionally, it's not that much better. Realistically, the bigger culprit is the Death Eater. But again, this is one of those situations where at endgame it's not a big deal. Death Eater is very, very strong in heroics because when you get it at level 6, you get 3 times your wisdom as temporary hit points. Even with a conservative estimate, let's say you only have like a 22 wisdom, that's still 66 temporary hit points every time you kill a monster. That is really, really high when you're level 6, and it is probably too much. However, by the time you get to the actual level cap, my druid right now has 74 wisdom, and so every single time I get a kill, I get 74 temporary hit points, and that stacks up to 5 times because I have extra cores in the tree, which brings me up to 370 temporary hit points. So that seems like it'd be really good, like 370 temporary hit points, and like, it's okay. Remember that druid has Winter's Heart, which gives them, I think, 12 times their wisdom as temporary hit points, and it's a button they can press every 30 seconds. It's reliable, so you can choose when you want to have it. Overall, I don't think that the Death Eater is in any capacity overpowered. If anything, it's pretty standard for temporary hit points, and it's not even as powerful as the temporary hit point effects you happen to get in epics. Sure, it does stack with both of them, but Death Eater kind of doesn't really need to take a hit in epics, so I think that it's kind of an issue of like, well, are they going to nerf it? I don't know. If they nerf it, then Blightcaster is going to fall completely out of relevancy in the epic setting because it's just not strong enough in comparison to the standard heavy hitters. Your Cold Druid, your Cold Alchemist, your Cold Sorcerer. Those things are just so much better and have so much more utility, considering the fact that a regular Cold Druid also happens to have Regenerate Mass and the Heal spell. There's really no reason to even consider playing a Blightcaster. So if it does get nerfed, you'll have no reason to ever consider playing a Blightcaster. So I don't think it would get nerfed. I think the only thing SSG might do is just make it so that Death Eater only gets 2 stacks at level 6, and they just keep spreading out the stacks to the later cores, which I think would be perfectly fine, and your character's still going to be super strong. But other than that, I really don't see it getting nerfed. But maybe, I could be wrong, but it doesn't really feel like it's something that's super necessary. I mean, spellcaster damage across the whole game is probably something that needs to get addressed. Like I said, like fact that 30% magic resistance rating, or like damage structure for magic resistance rating doesn't even matter. Also, hilariously, works against most imbues. So all these new imbues that got added in are also kind of shafted. So your best bet is like doing something like Pure Barbarian or Fighter with no imbues, or just playing a spellcaster and blowing everything up. I don't know, it's interesting, but we'll see what they ended up wanting to do with that. But now it's time for me with the build. Become the Blight with Blightcaster. Kind of like the flavor of the month build here. Blightcaster is super duper good and very good for Hardcore League. So if you want to make one, I have the link to the build in the description here. But I'm going to go over the gist of what my character does and a bit more explanation into it. But first, check out that cloak. Ooh, baby. This is the cloak from getting 10 Reaper points. In my opinion, probably the best looking cloak in the game. So yeah, if you want to get one of these, you do need to get 10 Reaper points, and whoa, that's a good looking cloak. I kind of love it. I love the shine. Very cool. Anyways, without further ado, let's talk about the actual character. So I'm playing as a Aasimar Blightcaster Druid. As I said, I would probably go human in hindsight, but you know, it is what it is. I want to see if Aasimar is going to be better. The reason I went Aasimar is because they get the Aasimar healing hands, so you'll be able to heal people. I use them twice during the heroic leveling process and 0 times in epics. So for me, I don't think it's super relevant or super necessary. So I'd probably just go human to get that extra feat and those extra skill points. Character defenses are reasonably good. Constitution and Wisdom is all you really need. Everything else is entirely a dump stat. As far as these skills go, my character is using Concentration, Heal, Spellcraft, Spot, and Swim. You actually don't need Concentration, so you can put this wherever you want. I just used it a little bit in Heroics before I got Quicken, and then once I got Quicken, I never needed this again. What else would you put points into? I don't know. Everything else is bad, so that's pretty much it. As far as the feats go, the heroic feats are pretty stock standard. It's a spellcaster, so it takes spellcasting and metamagic feats. So you grab Quicken, Maximize, and Empower. And then on top of that, you also grab Spell Focus, Conjuration, and a Greater Spell Focus Conjuration, because those spells are quite good. You pretty much all cast Conjuration spells, and nothing else really. Then metamagic feats are good for your spell-like abilities and heroics. And then once you get into epics, I just leave these on all the time because I don't like mana costs are irrelevant, so I don't need to worry about it. As far as combat styles, I actually did take Shield Mastery and Improved Shield Mastery for additional hit points. I also ended up using a shield at endgame. The build I have provided for you will have a shield built in, so you'll be able to kind of get that and have yourself a shield for some extra defenses. As far as the epic feats went, this character used Wellspring of Power, Intensify, Ruin, and Greater Ruin. I could have taken Embolden instead of Intensify for +2 spell DCs, but like I have a fair number of abilities that don't have saving throws on them, so I figured Intensify would be better, especially for Ruin and Greater Ruin, and Wellspring is just a huge amount of damage. And Ruin and Greater Ruin are made very powerful from some of your epic Destiny abilities. And then for the Destiny feats, I grabbed Epic Spell Power Acid, Perfect Shield Mastery, because this grants increased hit points as well as the extra physical resistance rating using a shield, Deific Warding for the physical magical resistance rating, and then Guardian Angel. Now, Guardian Angel is an effect that isn't like amazingly good, but it's really good for the lower damage threshold, experiences. So when I get below half, I get physical resistance equal to my Wisdom and saving throws equal to my epic level. So that is +10 bonus to saves, as well as 74 physical resistance rating when I drop below half. The thing is, monsters do about a third of my health and damage per strike, which means if I take 2 hits, I get the physical resistance rating. The third hit won't kill me, and that's kind of why I took it. Granted, I haven't had it even go off yet so far, but that is the gist of why I have Guardian Angel. It's not the best feat, especially when you're doing like R10s where you're dying in like 1 hit or 2. You're not going to get to that third hit from Guardian Angel unless you have like 100-something Wisdom. It's not going to happen. But here, it's pretty common for you to like go under half, and this would actually save you. So it gives you 1 extra hit. So I took that just in case. As far as the spells went, I actually don't think I swapped out any spells during the leveling process. I think this is literally all the spells that I used for the entire way up. You've got like Thorn Strike, Thorn Blade. I didn't actually use Splinter Bolt. I tried using Acid Arrow. I didn't really like it that much. But it's technically an option. Thorn Bloom, a lot of people have asking because they find Thorn Bloom doesn't function. It's because you can't quicken this. You have to turn Quicken off on Thorn Bloom. If you have Quicken turned on, it doesn't function. They should fix this spell. It's something I bug reported when it came out. I bug reported again. I hope they fix it. Or just make it so you can't quicken it. It doesn't function when it's quickened, so they got to make sure they turn that off. Thorn Wave is quite good. I just used it semi-regularly. Grasping Thorns, again, also quite good. You just want to use this as well as Spike Growth and just kind of drop those on the ground whenever you get the opportunity during the leveling process. Thorn Lance is a spell, like, if I have nothing else to cast, I'll cast Thorn Lance. The damage on it's fine. It's just, like, it's not really what I want to do. I'd much rather be casting Tsunami, which is insane. Acid Well, which is insane. Black Dragon Bolt, which is pretty good. Earthquake, which is insane. Earthquake actually gets a huge improvement from the, from Blightcaster, where you get Vile Eruption, so your Earthquake does acid damage on top of its regular damage, which is super duper good. And so you're going to be using this as often as you pretty much can. You really Earthquake basically every single group, because if it knocks a couple things down, that's good. And if it doesn't knock anything down, they still all die to acid damage, so it's super duper strong. This lasts for like a minute, so I don't know what this says. This is wrong. It does way more damage and it lasts way longer than this, so you can kind of ignore what this says and just assume it's very good. And the last spell that I use a lot is Word of Balance. I find Word of Balance is crazy. It's super high damage, and it's very useful against creatures with 2 alignments. If you don't know much about alignments, it takes a lot of practice to get used to what this does and doesn't work against. But what does work against is Reapers, which is why I have it. So Epic Destinies, we'll talk about this. You'll notice that I don't use Nature's Warrior at all. In theory, 1 point would get me Natural Adept for the hit points for the extra 8, but I didn't really think it was as important. If you are playing the build guide I wrote, you won't be using Fade Dark Illusionist, and instead you'll have more points in these other trees. If you do happen to have Fade Dark Illusionist, Greater Color Spray, very good. This is an extremely good ability, and it's fantastic. Also getting extra mana during the leveling process, also very good. While leveling, I got, at level 6, I had both Death Eater and Greater Color Spray. I had 11 points here. and 11 points here because it's just super duper powerful. Greater Color Spray is one of the best spells in DDO. You always want to take it when you can on a spellcaster, and it is still very good here, putting in a lot of work and working even in R4s at endgame. Then the rest of it's just the Blightcaster. During the leveling process, I had these two spell-like abilities. So I had the Thorn Strike as well as the Splinter Bolt. And I took those. I didn't take the rest of them. I just took those two, and I would just alternate 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, while casting in between that Spiked Growths with the extra double damage on Spike Growth and the Defiled Growth abilities, and then working my way up the tree. Season's Herald. I don't actually take Sunburst. This might be good. I don't know. I don't ever really need to cast it, so I didn't take it. Because I didn't want to spend the 1 point. I went for the Wisdom instead of that, because that seemed like it would be more relevant to my character. And then I grabbed Wisdom out of the Azamar tree. So that's pretty much what I did here. Yeah, just grabbing crit, reduce cost of quicken. For whatever reason, if you take Maximize here, you can also take Maximize here. That might be a bug. I don't know. But it lets you do both. So it lets you take 18 off of your Maximize cost, which is pretty sweet. So you gotta love that. And as I said, Death Eater is bread and butter. Every time you get a kill, you get your Wisdom as temp HP. And so right now I've got 74, which is kind of good. Not too bad. And then Epic Destinies. This is fairly straightforward. We're going up here, Draconic Incarnation, because you want to grab the double Ruin, Ruin Intensified, which makes it so your Ruin deals double damage, and it adds acid damage on top of that. Because Blightcasters get, what is this? It says Force spells, and this also Wax and Wane in Winter affects Force as well as Acid. It means that my character with gear equipped, I have 49 Force spell power and 49 Acid, or sorry, spell power crit, which means that you have 25% of the chance to double crit on Ruin or Greater Ruin, which just deletes whatever you hit, even on Reaper 4, which is very, very cool. Grabbing the Dragon Breath because it's the best Epic Strike, and then taking Scales of the Dragon because this absorbs damage when monsters attack you, which is super, super strong. Out of Primal Avatar, I do use Carrion Swarm. Important note for like the leveling process, I actually use Carrion Swarm all the way up until level 30. I didn't use Black Dragon Breath until I got to 30. I was just using Carrion Swarm and Shard Storm, but once you get to 30, especially once you get Gaping Maw, basically, you want to get rid of this. You want to go Primal Avatar first, as well as Kneeling Sentinel. The last place you spend points is your Draconic Incarnation, because this stuff is really high yield. You want to have the high yield stuff up front, and then you want to take this other stuff a little bit later. It might seem counterintuitive to have Renewal on a Druid, which is a character that already is a healer, but you only have Regenerate, so having two different things on two different cooldowns, so you can have both of them running at the same time is very good for protecting yourself and others. I also use the Shard Storm as well as the like extra damage and reflection, so you get temporary hit points, so it even jacks that up. And then I use the Mantle as well as Evergreen because this gives you tons of temporary spell points, so it makes it so you never really run out. That's kind of what I did with that. Now the gear list is going to be a little bit different than what you probably originally saw, so I'm going to be updating the gear list in the thread so you can follow along. The basic changes with this build, so I'm currently running 6-piece Autumn. So I've got the Leaf Mail here. I was originally using the Fey Twisted Medium, but I didn't want to get it, as well as the Fey Twisted Gloves, and I also didn't want to get those, so we're just using the Dead Ringers instead for Profane Spell Focus. As far as other fall items, you got the Ring of Fall's Decay for Acid and Nullification, which is not bad. You've got the Green Dragon Scale Bracers, which gives you 10% mana cost reduction, as well as the Vitality and stuff. And then you've also got the Celestial Insignia for Quality Constitution and Physical Sheltering, as well as the Cloak of Autumn for Insightful Constitution, which is pretty good. And then for winter items, I grabbed 2-piece winter for the physical resistance rating. So you have the Ring of Winter's Chill, which is your cold and impulse spell power. So that's all the spell powers that you cast except for healing. So you have ice, force, acid, and poison. All of those are covered here with these 2 rings. And then I have the Crown of Snow, which just gives some extra DCs, as well as the freezing effect, which goes off like irregularly, but it does happen. The things that are not part of a set, I have the Black Satin Waist, because it gives me quality wisdom. I don't have anywhere else. Also, I could not get an Insightful Wisdom item to build, so I'm using the Diamond of Insightful Wisdom. It's not too big of a deal. Make sure you buy one when you get here. You can buy them in the DDO store, and you'll have enough points by the time you've leveled up all the way. I highly recommend that. I have the Legendary Bottle of Shadows, because it gives Profane well-rounded, and just seems good to me. It's just plus 2 to all stats. I couldn't think of a better trinket. There probably is a better trinket, but I just couldn't think of one in the moment. And then probably the hardest item to get, I found these randomly generated Prudent 15 goggles. If you don't have one of these, what you could do is you can craft a collective sight from Sharn, and you can get Wisdom 13 and Insightful Wisdom 6, which means you don't have to buy an augment and put it in here. You can just craft it out of Sharn, and you'll be down 1 Wisdom. So you'll be getting a total of 19 wisdom as opposed to 20, which is not that big of a deal. You can make that up in other ways. I've also got the dinosaur bone boots here, where I put in the constitution. So I have constitution, insightful, and quality constitution here, as well as putting acid spell crit. I'm later going to be putting in the claw for magic resistance rating, so I can get some more, and the horn will be +2 sacred DCs, so I'm going to get a +2 bonus to my DCs as well. And then my dinosaur bone dagger, where I have a whole bunch of sentient filigree here. My character is wearing 4-piece Eye of the Beholder and Otto's irrevocable power set from filigrees. You get these from Ravenloft. A lot of Ravenloft farming, but we got them out. Thank you to all the people who traded with me, and I've been trading filigrees to other people, so it's been a good time. As far as what's actually in my dinosaur bone weapon, I have plus to all spell powers. This is just for anything I forgot. Melt Fang, which adds acid damage to all of my spells. Ice Claw, which gives me +2 wisdom. And Bright Horn, which makes it so that my attacks and spells have a chance to give me 1,000 temp HP. Turns out, very good on Hardcore League, so I'd recommend this over anything else. You might be like, oh, well, maybe I should take like the Flame Horn, which makes it so monsters take more magic damage. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Monsters die in 1 or 2 hits anyway, so you can even stack the Flame Horn, so you might as well just have the temp HP. And then lastly, this is the small legendary weathered targe. This one takes a little bit of time to get out because it comes from the Sands of Menectaran, so it takes you a little bit longer to actually pick up than you would expect because you have to like basically go farm for it, and then you have to upgrade it to epic, and you have to upgrade it to legendary. And to upgrade it, you have to go get the crystals from the sands before you outlevel them. So you have to do it in epics, but you have to do it before level 25, because if you're level 25, you can't do any of the Sands quests anymore, and you need to collect all the crystals. I just repeated offering of blood till I had 150 crystals, and then I had enough to go all the way up to legendary, and this shield is amazing. Electric Absorb is super good. There's lots of electric damage, and then Insightful and Quality Magical Sheltering is very, very nice, as well as having the being made of wood. So my character has, you know, a fairly reasonable amount of stats, and it's pretty tanky and defensive. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got. It's fairly straightforward. Like I said, my character, in terms of combat spells, I cast Acid Well, Ruin, Greater Ruin, Shard Storm, Tsunami, Word of Balance, and Grasping Thorns. I also cast Black Dragon Breath and Greater Color Spray. I will almost always open with either Greater Color Spray or Earthquake, whichever one is off cooldown. So I'll use either Greater Color Spray or Earthquake to open the fight, and then follow it with like Black Dragon Breath, Acid Well to blow everything up that's inside the room, and then anything that's remaining gets ruined, Greater Ruined. And I also make sure to put on Shard Storms, that way my character is able to protect myself and also deal just passive damage to enemies as they're running around. You also want to make sure you're using Scales of the Dragon on cooldown, because it gives you these absorb armor here, this barrier of scales, which absorbs 450 damage from physical, which is very, very nice, as well as giving me half damage taken from acid. So my character doesn't have the highest of saving throws. My reflex saves aren't amazing, but my elemental defenses are 76% acid absorb, 45 electric, 60 fire. I don't take a lot of elemental damage. It's mostly cold where I run into problems, because you're, as a hive person, you take actually 15% more damage from cold. So it's, you know, cold is kind of the hardest thing to deal with here, so you got to be careful about that one. But as I said, it's kind of how I run it. Spells I don't really use. Again, if I have nothing else, I'll cast Thorn Lance. I sometimes use Master of Decay. It's all right. And then against single target, I like to throw in Rend the Soul and Black Dragon Bolt, just because it adds a little bit of extra damage in there. You're also going to notice that I have like all my meta magic feats turned on, so they're just like active on everything, and the spell cost is still below. That's because spell cost reduction is really crazy in this game. And so by getting spell cost reduction here and here and here on my meta magic feats, as well as getting spell cost reduction here and here, so my meta magic feats cost borderline nothing, and then I have 15% minus spell cost here. I have 10% minus spell cost here. I have another 10% spell cost from epic levels, so my spells cost 35% less than normal. Like, I barely spend any spell points, and I can just spam everything on cooldown. Like, just for perspective, fully meta magic ruin is only costing 109, and this spell base is 150. So I just chunked it down by that much. It's pretty sweet. So I'm very happy overall with the performance of this character. It's working well. I'm going to be working my way through the rest of Reaper mode and getting all the you know, the last reward and helping other people along the way. And if you want to try out this character, get on it. It's really good, and you got to play it while the playing is good. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, make sure you follow the channel and subscribe for some more Blight content. Probably not. I'm probably not going to make another video about Blightcaster. I'm probably moving on to Sacred Fist. So thank you. Bye-bye.